Hey guys, Dr. Nicholas Beasley here, Wuji Medicine. And today we've got a question from a beautiful patient I've been treating for a while named Gail. And Gail's asked me, what are my best recommendations for diet and for weight loss? Now, this is a big subject and we could spend a lot of time on this. And there's so many nuances and there's so much information out there that it's quite overwhelming. So, these ideas that I'm about to share with you are not based upon any research specifically. They're not necessarily, I'm not kind of pulling out the information from a book here. I'm not going to pull out some research that's just been done lately and give you some new magic ideas on anything that's, kind of exotic or any fancy pills or anything. This is based on working with patients for the last 15 years and just working on what I find to be the most effective, not only for my own health, but for my patients' health. So when it comes to weight loss, really, all diets seem to have an effect. When we look at every single diet, they all seem to improve the body mass index and help with general kind of like losing weight. Now, what is the kind of core principle, the core ideas that are behind each one? Because obviously we know there's different schools of thought, different philosophies, and different ideas share different qualities. We've got people on the keto carnivore side that come in and say reducing carbohydrates has a dramatic effect. On the contrary, we have people in the vegan raw food kind of side that say that actually not having the fat has the effect, and so forth. But both seem to have an effect. Both seem to work to a degree anyway, especially in the short term. So when we look at the core ideas that are shared in both, the most obvious things that I can get my head around, and I think that most academics will kind of agree on, is there is some level of calorie restriction. There is some level of taking some nutrient out, whether that's a large dose of carbohydrates or a large dose of fat or protein out the body. And it seems to have a great effect overall. So we can take that aside for now. Let's just take out that the calories do play a role with weight loss. So I'm not to say that it's the only thing, but this definitely seems to be across the board. So that's the first one. The second one is the elimination of specific processed foods or maximally processed foods. We're all going to consume some form of processed foods, whether it's olive oil or nut butters, milks, etc. But generally speaking, there is some level of detoxification that's happening through processed foods. So these are two things that are happening in there. And another area that we look at a lot is insulin. Insulin plays a big role in the body's kind of like ability to regulate sugar and to then be able to use adipose to then convert that into sugar for energy. So these are the kind of the core principles that I seem to kind of come up against and kind of present themselves when we're looking at diet. Okay, so I have tried many different diets with patients. I've tried my own different diet, and quite frankly, they all work. But what I find is really necessary is that when the patients come in, whatever mode of practice or whatever mode of diet they try, there needs to be some shift, some energetic shift, meaning what I usually do, I've made a big shift that's different. Okay, so it's like whether we can say I've reduced eating a meal a day, or I've dramatically taken this out. There's been something that's different this week that I'm doing that wasn't there last week. And in regards to diet, it could be that simply, let's look at fasting. We simply reduce eating breakfast. Now, if we miss breakfast for one day, we lose a few hundred calories. It's probably going to make not much difference. But if we reduce it over a course of like a few weeks, you could be looking at up to 10 to 20,000 calories difference, and it will have a dramatic effect on the body. So we could also look at reducing carbohydrates, unnecessary pastas and breads and rices, and you might find that over the course, not of a day, but over a course of a month, could reduce a massive amounts of calories. It could be up to 10,000 calories or such forth. Or it might be that I'm reducing the amount of fat that I'm eating in my diet, and so forth and so forth. So there needs to be some commitment, some discipline involved where what you were doing before, now you've changed and you've taken something out. Based on my study and based on my knowledge, I like to reduce more processed carbohydrates, starches, grains as such, because I find they are a lot more available and they're generally cheaper quality nutrients. Now, there's definitely high quality grains, fermented, like rices, and you can get like whole grains, you get ancient grains, all these beautiful grains that I think that have an important part in our health. But for weight loss, I find that it's easy for me to consume these in excess. Rather, what I find is that it's harder for me to consume protein in excess, although I do feel it's quite easy to get enough protein through whole foods. I think it's a little bit easier to get it through carbohydrates. So my approach is that if we can reduce the carbohydrate intake substantial, whether it's through doing a fast, I do like the idea of holding out breakfast, and this is just for 30 days. You will dramatically drop down the calories that you're taking in. Another thing that I actually really enjoy doing and that I recommend doing is at nighttime I avoid carbohydrates, or starchy and what we call like more starchier carbs and a little bit more kind of the short chain, easy to digest carbohydrates that have a high glycemic index, the GI. And so at nighttime, generally speaking, I would consume protein, whether it's from of meat, fish, eggs, tofu, etc. And I would have that with just some greens, leafy greens. I might even have like broccoli or spinach, asparagus, and so forth. And I really eat quite a large meal, but I've dramatically decreased the amount of carbohydrates in that meal. In the morning, however, I actually make, with my family, we make a beautiful homemade sourdough bread, and I enjoy having my bread in the morning. I think it's a beautiful thing. It contains an incredible amount of probiotics. So I do recommend, having one meal a day where you do enjoy your food. And you enjoy the quality, good quality organic sourdough can be very good for your health when, had in moderation. So basically, what ends up happening is the only really carbohydrate I have a day is 2 pieces of toast. And throughout the day, I would generally fast. I would generally have either bone broth soup. I would have some miso. I'm quite busy through the day. And then nighttime, I would simply have high amounts of protein and then just leafy green cruciferous vegetables. And that one works really well for me. It allows me to maintain a healthy calorie intake without having excess. It allows me to enjoy carbohydrates, but I have a set time when I enjoy them. But at the same time, it allows me to maintain health. When we are looking to lose weight, generally we're trying to reverse what we're doing. So we have to put a little bit more rules in place. When you maintain it, you can be a little bit more relaxed. And so there's different ways to approach weight loss. But I do find personally, if we can lower the amount of sugar in the blood, we can lower the insulin. And when the insulin's low, this will force the liver to go into the stored fat and convert that back into sugar, so that then we can actually use the body weight as a form of energy through ketosis. So that's a very effective form of losing weight. Now, do I recommend this long term? I think for some people it's better than others. I think everyone is unique, and that's why I really like to actually sit down with patients and actually go through their diet and actually kind of like look at their biomarkers, look at how the body's doing, look at the pulse. But I think that if we look at like the general ideas of for every 4 kilos that we put on, the heart is pumping 100 times harder. Yes, okay, we look at fasting, it might affect some hormones. Yes, we look at a little bit of calorie restriction, it might affect some things like cortisol. But the actual benefits, in my experience, outweigh the negative or the kind of adverse effects. I like to really focus with things like diet to make changes in 30-day periods. So what we do is we look at a body, how it transforms over them 30 days. And if in 30 days time we're feeling good and it's having good effect with the body, we might want to do another 30 days. Nothing is permanent, but when it comes to actually losing weight, if you're not doing anything that's dramatic enough or strong enough stimuli to signal to the body, hey, I need to get energy from somewhere, then quite frankly, it's going to be very difficult because the body likes to maintain itself. It doesn't like change. So you have to have something very different on the outside. Now you can introduce more exercise. The issue and the challenge with exercise, the more you exercise, the more energy you need. So the chances of eating more go up. So I like to look at like the insulin diet, which I've sent some links down below and some descriptions where I break down the biomechanisms of that. I just find it more a successful diet, and the stricter you are with that, the better in a short period of time, the better. But I really just want you to know that there is no one way and that everybody's slightly different. And everyone's got different needs and different goals and different weight loss ideas, and that there is many different ways that work. The ones that I'm sharing with you are ones that I found useful and the ones that I think that have given me the most clinical benefit, for my patients. So I definitely think it's worth exploring, whether it be a small fast every day, whether it be just to lower the amount of starch carbohydrates, whether it be to work around maybe using less amounts of fat like olive oils or that. As long as we're doing something which can lower the calorie intake along with lowering the insulin spikes that happen due to blood glucose levels, then I think that we will get generally good results. Again, it's really nice to focus in 30-day periods. It's really good to so we've got a lot to aim at. And then just to generally look at the body and measure the results. If you've got any more questions, you got any more ideas, this is just a place where I like to share my thoughts, then definitely send me an email or book in a session and we can go over a little bit more personalized diet for you. But generally speaking, we're all quite similar deep down, and these ideas do work across the board on a general level. I wouldn't sweat the nuances. I would not sweat the small stuff. I wouldn't overthink it, but just make some big change today and repeat that for 30 days and something big will happen, I guarantee. Keep well, everyone. I'll see you next week.